The waves are restless tonight. You sit at the edge of the known world, staring into the wine dark sea. Behind you, the wind carries the scent of myrtle and dust. Before you, only salt and silence. You are a Roman, once a senator, a poet, a magistrate, now exile. This is not death, but it is close. Worse, perhaps, because death ends, but exile, it stretches across the provinces, across the sea, across years of slow forgetting. In ancient Rome, exile wasn't just a punishment, it was a fate, a tearing away, not just from your city, but from your name, your friends, your rights, and your meaning. Imagine it. One moment you're reclining at a feast under oil lamps, quoting Virgil. The next, you're on a ship bound for some distant dust choked outpost, your estates seized, your voice silenced. How did it feel to be exiled in ancient Rome? Let's find out. Close your eyes. The year is 8 CE. You're standing trial, not in a courtroom, but in the shadowy forum, where rumor echoes louder than reason. Your accuser is powerful. Your defenders are silent. Your fate has already been sealed by the whisper of a single man, Augustus, Princeps of Rome. And now the sentence is spoken, Exilium. But before we live this story, we must understand what exile meant in the ancient world. Rome didn't have prisons as we know them. Punishment came in forms the state found useful: fines, flogging, enslavement, execution, or exile. Exile could be temporary or permanent, voluntary or forced, and its severity depended on your status. If you were a citizen of the lower classes, exile might save you from death. But it came with disgrace. If you were an elite, like the poet Ovid or the philosopher Seneca, exile was the emperor's velvet dagger. Publicly, your name might still be spoken, but in private, people looked away. You became dangerous, tainted, forgotten. Some were sent to far-flung islands like Pandateria, a desolate speck of land where even birds refused to nest. Others to the cold northern provinces, where Latin sounded foreign even on Roman tongues. You were still alive, but Rome, the city, the soul, the light, was gone, and you were out. We begin your story, then not in chains, but in confusion. You're escorted through the streets of Rome under guard, not with years, but with silence. People know better than to stare too long. After all, what happened to you could happen to them. The journey begins. You travel by cart, then by ship. Your destination? Thomas, a remote outpost on the edge of the Black Sea. Cold, barbaric, uncivilized, they say. You remember the words of your wife as you left. They may take you from Rome, but they cannot take Rome from you. It sounded noble then. Now, it sounds cruel. The ship rocks. The sky weeps. You arrive, soaked, shivering, disoriented. Thomas is bleak, windswept. The people speak Greek. They look at you like a statue that wandered off its pedestal. You are the foreigner here, and there is no return. You try to write. You try to remember the smell of the Tiber, the sound of the rostrum in the forum, the touch of the papyrus beneath your fingers. But your ink freezes in winter. Your memory plays tricks. Your Latin feels ornamental. This is the true punishment. Not the place, but the silence. Rome moves on without you. You hear of new laws passed, new games held, new favorites rising in the court of Augustus. Your letters go unanswered, and then one day you hear that your name has been struck from the Senate rolls, that your villa in Tivoli has been given to a minor court official, that your likeness has been removed from your family tomb. You no longer exist. This is not simply a story of grief. It's a story of identity and the thin thread upon which status hangs. Because in Rome, who you are is where you are. Your house, your name, your lineage. To be exiled is to be dislocated from all of that. You are not physically tortured, but you begin to unravel. You speak to yourself more often. You rehearse conversations with ghosts. You cling to rituals, waking at the same hour, reciting prayers to gods who no longer listen. Even the stars look different here. But exile can change a man. And some men, like Seneca, like Ovid, even find a strange sort of freedom in the void. Freed from the court intrigue, freed from flattery, freed from the endless race of ambition. You begin to see things differently. The villagers who once feared you now offer food in exchange for stories. You begin to teach Latin to their children. You begin to write again, not for glory, but for survival. And you realize something Rome never taught you. The self is not made of marble. It bends. It endures. We live the days, the winters, the hallucinations, the regrets, and the fragile hope that one day a messenger will arrive with a scroll, a seal, and a single word. Revocatus. Recalled. Until then, this is your story. You are a Roman in exile, and this is how it felt. Chapter 1. The Sentence. Rome hums like a living thing. Cobblestones echo with the sandals of magistrates and slaves. Laurel trees shiver in the breeze. In the distance, vendors bark in Greek, Latin, Punic, Aramaic, each language feeding into the mouth of the empire. And somewhere along this noise, your name is whispered. You didn't think it would come to this. You thought you were careful. You thought the favor of Rome was like an amulet you wore, a token of protection. But Rome doesn't love you. Rome tolerates you. And in this single afternoon, Rome has turned. It begins with a letter, folded, wax sealed, stamped with the insignia of Princeps himself. Augustus Caesar. You are summoned, not for a celebration, not for debate, for an accusation. You're not told what for. That's how power works. The punishment is named before the crime. And yet, you already suspect. Was it the poem you wrote last winter? The satire that mocked the censors? Was it the dinner party in the Subura, where a certain senator's wife drank more than she spoke? Or is it simpler than that? Are you merely in the way? You arrive at the forum early. It is not a trial in the modern sense. There are no robes, no gavels, no jury, only eyes, watching, measuring. There's a silence around you that feels louder than any jeer. No one will speak to you directly, not even friends. Your allies have turned neutral. Your neutral friends have vanished. This is what exile does before it begins. It isolates, it strips. A voice calls out, clear and unimpressed. You are to be removed from Rome. Your charge? Morum corruptio. Corruption of morals. A vague phrase used to crush inconvenient people. You want to speak, but this is not a dialogue. The sentence has been agreed upon by the Senate, or at least the part of it that listens when Augustus scoffs. You return home in a daze. The scroll confirming your exile is already nailed to your door. Your slaves stand in silence. Your wife is crying, not out of sorrow, but out of rage. She knows what this means. You're not being executed, but your identity is. Your property will be seized, your name removed from public records. Your children, if you have any, will grow up with the stain of shame. And worst of all, you must leave Rome within 10 days. The city you were born in, the city you studied in, the city where your father was buried, where your son was born. Gone. You pack little, not because you don't want to take more, but because there's nothing you're allowed to take. One servant, a few scrolls, a small purse of denarii. You're forbidden from taking official documents, forbidden from writing to officials, forbidden from ever returning. In the quiet of night, you look at the Palatine Hill one last time. It glows golden and distant, as if it were already myth. The journey begins. You travel by mule cart toward the coast, escorted by a silent guard. No chains. Rome is elegant even in cruelty. But the absence of ropes does not make you free. At night, the inns refuse you. Some pretend they're full, others look the other way, apologetically. You begin to realize you're not a person anymore. You are a symbol, a warning. You sleep in stables, and somewhere along the southern road, you dream of your own funeral, your friends watching from afar, your body on the pyre. Except you're not dead. You're watching too, from the other side of Rome. On the fifth day, you reach the coast. A ship is waiting. You board. You sit beneath the sail, silent. You try to hold Rome in your mind. The sound of the fountains, the heat of marble and the sun, the scent of olive and burning cedar wood. Even memory begins to betray you. The wind picks up. The coastline shrinks behind you. And then there is nothing. Just water. And the shape of exile growing larger ahead. Arrival at the edge. You do not remember falling asleep, but you wake to a jolt. The ship has docked, or rather beached. This is not a harbor, not a port. Just a stretch of grey land, wet with morning fog. The sky is dull, the sea slaps lazily against the rocks. You step off the boat, and Rome is gone. Behind you, marble, power, statues that outlive their makers. Ahead, a wooden outpost surrounded by grass and wind. This is Thomas, a settlement on the western coast of Black Sea, what the Romans call the fringe provinces, what you call nowhere. Even the air feels unfamiliar, thick, wild. You are now outside civilization, and yet still alive. That's the first strange thing about exile. It kills you socially, but leaves your body intact. Your arrival is not greeted. No trumpets, no herald, not even a translator. Just a single official who walks up to you, scans the scroll that names you, and points to a stone house beyond the ridge. It's more hut than house. Inside, it smells of mold and seaweed. There is a cot, a table, a bowl. No library, no forum, no theater, no temple. Your room was full of voices. This place has none. Even the birds seem cautious. The locals do not fear you, but they do not welcome you either. You are a Roman in a Roman colony, and yet you are foreign. They speak a mixture of Thracian, Dacian, and corrupted Greek. You speak only Latin and the occasional poetic Greek from your school days. There is no one to listen to your eloquence, no one to care who your father was, no one who knows or believes that you once dined with Augustus. It is humbling. No, worse, it is unmaking. You write a letter to your wife, to your son, to a former student, to anyone. You do not even ask to be recalled, not yet. You simply want to hear that you are remembered. The messenger takes it for a small fee. You watch him disappear over the hills. And then you wait. 1 day, 2, a week, no reply. Later, you learn the local governor has been intercepting your letters. For security, you're not just exiled, you're cut off. Food here is strange. The bread is coarse and bitter. The fish tastes of mud. The wine is thick, almost chewy, fermented from berries instead of grapes. At first, you barely eat. Your stomach rebels. But hunger is persuasive. You learn to eat what the land offers, to wash in cold streams, to sleep without oil lamps or incense. And slowly, the routines of exile set in. You rise with the sun, you walk the beach, you count the gulls, you stare across the water toward the direction of Rome, not because you think it's there, but because you need it to be. You write in the margins of your scrolls, notes, verses, prayers, half to yourself, half to the gods. And still, no word from Rome. The weeks stretch into months. Once you were busy every hour, debating, politicking, scheming, reciting. Now, time moves differently. Slow, long, circular. And with it comes a creeping terror. What if this is it? What if the man you were is already dead? What if this hut is your tomb? You wake some nights gasping, your fingers grasping for your senatorial ring, only to remember you left it behind. The hand you look at now is not the hand of signed edicts. It is leaner, raw, sun-darkened. Your reflections in the water is not someone you know. One morning, a boy from the village brings you a dead hare as an offering. You try to speak Latin. He doesn't understand. So you nod, thank him with a gesture, and he smiles. It's the first real human moment you've had since arrival. Over time, you begin to see them, not as savages, but as survivors. Their rituals, their stories, their offerings to strange gods made of wood and straw. These are not foolishness, they are memory. And you begin to realize something painful. They have a culture too. You just never learned it because you never had to. That night, you sit outside and try to map the stars. They are the same stars you knew in Rome, but without your astrolabe, without your notes, they seem scrambled. You look up and think, how did I get here? Not the travel, not the sentence, but the silence inside you that let this happen. You were proud, sharp, respected, but maybe you were also blind. Blind to the shifting winds of favor, blind to the whispers in the Senate, blind to the hunger of Rome to devour its own. You start to understand why the wise feared fame more than death. It's month 4 when the first response comes. not from your wife, not from a friend, but from a minor scribe, official, cold, polite. It reads, "Your presence is noted. Your conduct will determine the duration of your condition. Remain peaceful. Avoid contact with the capital. Do not attempt to communicate further." Signed with a wax seal, no return address. You burn the scroll. You do not cry, but your hands shake. You are not forgotten. You are managed. So you begin something else. You write a poem, not for publication, but for yourself. Not in praise of Rome, not in complaint, but in truth. A truth too soft for marble, too quiet for courts. You write, "I have seen Rome from the outside, and from the outside Rome is a shadow on the sea." The seasons of silence. Time no longer obeys the calendar. You mark the months not by festivals or processions. Those belong to Rome now, but by the color of the sea, the way it shifts storm gray in spring to copper blue in the heat of summer, and by the way your body changes. Your face has grown leaner, your hands rough. The calluses tell stories now of chopping wood, digging your own latrine pit, stitching a torn tunic by firelight. You used to be an orator. Now, your only audience is the wind. But strangely, the silence does not crush you anymore. It simply is. The first full winter arrives like a sentence inside a sentence. Snow falls heavy. The wind howls from the Black Sea like it's trying to erase the coastline. Your roof leaks. The coat mildews. You burn everything you are not wearing. You write less, think more. Some days, your thoughts spiral inward. You remember your father's face, how he never quite believed in you. You remember your first vote in the Senate, how your hand trembled. You remember the girl in Naples, the one you promised to return to. Where is she now? Where are any of them? Are they even alive? Or is that world now locked behind some gate no letter could ever breach? But the human soul is stubborn. In spring, something stirs again. It begins with a bird, small, ugly, persistent, building a nest above your door. You watch it every day. You give it a name. You don't tell anyone. It's a secret between you and the universe. Then one of the village elders, an old Thracian woman with more teeth missing than present, brings you a bundle of herbs. She points to your cough and mimes stirring. You make the tea. It's bitter, but your chest eases. That night you feel warmth for the first time in months. Not on your skin, but somewhere deeper. Somewhere near your ribs. You're still unwanted, but not unloved. One evening, a storm traps a merchant caravan near your hut. They ask for shelter. You share what you have. And when they learn you speak Latin, one of them, a scribe from Nicopolis, asks, "Were you someone?" You laugh for the first time in exile. You answer honestly, "Yes, once." He pauses, then nods. "We all are." The next morning, he offers you something: parchment, ink, and a fresh seal. Not a message to Rome, that ship has sailed, but something else. An invitation to write, not as a senator, not as a politician, but as a man. You begin a new set of letters, not to people, but to the gods, and not in Latin, but in a blend of Latin and local dialect. Half prayer, half journal. You call them epistulae nihile, letters to nothing. And somehow they help. You aren't trying to return anymore. You're trying to understand. The seasons cycle again. A second summer arrives. You learn to fish. You barter for olives. You teach a group of local boys how to read your name. But you don't tell them what it meant. Sometimes you think about your son. He would be 8 now. Would he recognize you? Would he understand what happened? Would he care? You used to believe legacy was carved in stone. Now you wonder if it's not something softer, like the way a story travels from mouth to mouth, never quite the same, never quite forgotten. A strange thing happens in your second autumn. You stop dreaming of Rome, not because you've let it go, but because your mind no longer lives there. You dream instead of waves, of birds, of walking barefoot across stones, of a village girl laughing, of a child learning your name. Your name, not your title, not your rank, just you. Then one day a messenger arrives, dusty, tired, pale from fear. He carries a scroll. It is sealed. You do not open it right away. You stare at it for hours, turn it over, smell the wax, feel the old ghosts rise in your throat. When you finally unroll it, the ink is brief. Augustus is dead. Tiberius reigns now. No change to your condition. Remain where you are. Your existence is tolerated. It is not hope, but it is notice. Rome has spoken. You are no longer invisible. But it's strange. But that hurts more than silence. You realize part of you didn't want to be remembered anymore. He had built something here, something fragile, something yours, and now Rome remembers and might come knocking. So you take a walk down the shore, past the village, up to the highest ridge where the wind can't lie. You sit, you breathe, and you ask yourself not if you want to return, but if you even can. Who are you now? Not a senator, not an exile, just a man. And for the first time since your banishment, that feels like enough. Ghosts of Rome. The longer you're away from Rome, the less real it seems. Not gone, no, just surreal. It begins with dreams. At first, they're sharp. You're walking through the forum, the marble cold underfoot. Senators arguing in clipped voices. You smell roasted figs, crushed laurel, iron. Then the dreams begin to shift. The faces are blurred. The temples are too tall. Your house appears as a ruin even in memory. And when you wake, the guilt comes. You've forgotten the order of the streets. You've forgotten the names of those who once waited for your letters. You've forgotten which statue stood at which crossroads. It terrifies you, not because you miss it, but because you don't know whether the forgetting is betrayal or mercy. You begin to speak aloud when you're alone, not because you're losing your mind, but because memory needs a witness. You recite old speeches to the wind, practice lines of Horace and Catullus to your hut's damp walls. You imagine yourself standing once again on the rostra. But there are no applause here, no applause, and no judgment. Just the hollow echo of your voice in the cold. One evening, during a storm, lightning splits the sky. And in the brief flash, you see Rome on the waves. Its rooftops, its domes, its towers of thought and marble. But it's just illusion, your mind playing games, grief dressed as architecture. You remember Ovid, your fellow exile, your poetic twin. His lines echo in your birds. I'm the poet of the steppe, a voice in the wilderness, cast from the center of the world to its frozen edge. You wonder if he ever stopped feeling Roman, or if the pain became his companion. Letters still come, sporadic, rare, cryptic. One tells you of a cousin who was arrested for treason. Another warns that your son has been placed under moral supervision, a phrase that means nothing and everything in Roman politics. One letter, unsigned, clearly smuggled, tells you that a man you once mentored has taken your place in the Senate. He quoted one of your speeches in a recent debate, claimed it as his own. You feel no anger, just estrangement. That Rome still lives and moves and plots without you. That your absence didn't pause the machine, it oiled it. You try to imagine your return. What would you do? Where would you live? Your house has likely been sold. Your seat in the Senate is dust. Your name is spoken, if at all, with a certain caution. You're no longer useful. Rome has no use for men who have learned to live without it. And so, your mind plays a cruel trick. It begins to Romanize your exile. You catch yourself applying Roman order to your new life. You map out the village in terms of insulae. You nickname the old Thracian woman Juno. You refer to the boys who bring you wild berries as your clients. Even here, at the edge of the empire, you try to build a Rome of the mind. Why? Because Rome was never just a city. It was your structure. Without it, your world is shapeless. And shapelessness in Rome was a form of madness. But then you bring to see the cracks in that old structure. You remember the hypocrisy, the whispers, the empty applause, the senators who spoke of virtue while taking bribes under the table. You remember the trial, not fair, not formal, not noble. You remember the silence of your friends. You remember your own silence when it happened to others before you. Maybe exile doesn't just reveal the cruelty of Rome. Maybe it reveals the cruelty within you, the parts that bowed, the parts that smiled, the parts that stayed quiet when the truth was bleeding out in the forum. One morning you go down to the beach and begin carving words into stone. Not Latin, not Thracian, something new, a private script, a blend of syllables, a code that only you can read. Not because you want to hide it, but because you want to create something that belongs to no empire. That night, you stare at the fire and realize you're no longer waiting to be recalled. You're no longer counting the days. You are no longer hoping for forgiveness from a place that cannot love you. You are, in some strange and irreversible way, free. But freedom is its own kind of exile. You still carry Rome inside you, its language, its hunger, its dreams of perfection. And no matter how far you go, no matter how long you stay away, you know this. Rome is a ghost, and you are its medium. The message that changes everything. It's quiet afternoon. You're by the sea, mending a fishing net you've come to treat like a second cloak. The sun is warm, the tide calm. You've learned to take comfort in such things, small, predictable things. Then you see him, a rider on a sweating horse, galloping towards the village. Eyes scanning, mouth tight. The villagers stare as he dismounts, but he ignores them. He holds a scroll, sealed in black wax. He's looking for you, and suddenly, everything you've worked so hard to forget rushes back. The Senate, the Forum, the marble, the judgment. You take the scroll. It feels heavier than it should. Your hands tremble. Not from fear, from memory. You open it alone. It's written in formal Latin, the phrasing careful, but the meaning is unmistakable. By order of the Senate and the pleasure of the Emperor Tiberius, you are hereby revocatus, recalled to Rome. Your exile is at an end. No apology, no explanation, just a reversal. As cold and precise as the sentence that exiled you, the empire doesn't say we were wrong. The empire only says you may return. You stare at the scroll for a long time, not because you don't understand, but because you don't know what you feel. Joy? Relief? Rage? There's a part of you, small, whispering, that wants this, that wants Rome to see you again, to prove you survived, to walk back into the curia and look the cowards in the eye. But there's another part now, a larger part, the part that knows the rhythm of the waves, that knows the names of the children here, that knows how to live without performance. That part is afraid. Because this isn't just an invitation, it's a test. You walked the shoreline that night, the same way you did on your first evening in exile. But this time, the air feels different. You're not alone with your loss. You're holding possibility. And possibility is heavier than grief. What does return even mean? You're not the man who left Rome. You're not the man who arrived here. You are something in between, something undefined. And Rome does not welcome the undefined. Still, the order is clear. You are expected. The ship will arrive in 2 days. You begin to pack. Though the act feels strange, everything you own now is patched, stained, humble, not suitable for Rome. And maybe that's the point. You're not returning to reclaim your place. You're returning as proof that empire can bend but not break you. You look in the mirror. No, the water. Your face is marked by weather and time. You think, let them see this. That night, the villagers gather outside your hut. They have heard. They bring food, salted fish, a rough-cut wool cloak, a crude carving of a bird. One boy, your student, begs you not to go. I'll forget the letters, he says. Panicked, I won't remember what they mean. You kneel beside him and whisper. They mean you can remember anything, even me. He nods, but doesn't smile. No one smiles. This isn't a celebration. It's a funeral for the version of you they built with their kindness. The ship arrives at dawn. You walk down the coast, alone. You do not carry much. You do not look back. But in your pocket, tucked in your robe, is something new. A letter. Not for Rome, but for yourself. It begins. When you return, do not kneel. You were never truly gone. The journey is long. Days at sea, endless sky, salt spray, the thrum of Roman sails. You do not speak much to the sailors. They know who you are. Not the details, just the shape. A man once cast out, now summoned home. You think of Ulysses, how long it took him to reach Ithaca. Of how long it took him to reach Ithaca. Of how, even when he arrived, the place no longer knew him. And then there it is, a faint silhouette on the horizon. Then the sparkle of temples. then the curved shoulders of aqueducts, then the red tilted roofs and 7 hills of Roma. You are back, but you're not whole. You are layered. Woman, exile, ghost, man, and Rome. Rome is waiting. Return without home. Because the place remembers you differently than you remember it, you step off the ship like a dream steps into daylight. The docks of Ostia are alive. Merchants shouting, slaves unloading goods, a senator's retinue passing by in polished silence. And not one person looks at you. Once your name was murmured through the corridors of power. Now, it's as though you never left or never existed. You pull your cloak tighter. It smells of salt and smoke. Not Roman enough. A young official approaches. He checks your scroll. He nods mechanically. You are to report to the Temple of Concordia in 2 days' time. That's it. No escort, no apology, no curiosity. Rome is a city that forgets on purpose. You walk through the gates alone. Rome is bigger than you remember. Louder, dirtier. More gold, more marble, more blood. The crowds seem younger. The fashions strange. The slang unfamiliar. You pass statues of men you once knew. Some dead, some dishonored, some now enshrined. Your own statue once stood in a garden near the Palatine Hill. You pass the spot, it's gone, replaced by a small fig tree. You pause, not out of grief, but out of surprise of how little it hurts. Gone, given to a provincial governor 3 years ago. You are offered a room in a modest villa near the Aventine. Technically state-owned, technically temporary. The walls are clean. The bed is stiff. It smells like disuse and formality. You light no candles that first night. You sit in the dark, listening to the muffled sounds of the city. The creak of carts, the echo of sandals, the bark of orders. Rome has moved on. You're not a returning hero. You are a tolerated shadow. On your second morning, you walk to the forum. It's the same layout, same stones, but the air feels shallower. You hear men debating, but the words are empty. Safe, performative. You know the dance. You once danced it well, but now you see its skeleton. You're offered a new title, Advisor Emeritus to the Senate, an honor with no power. You nod. You thank them. You wear the new badge, but inside, you're still carrying the ghost of Thomas, still thinking in sea silence. You visit your wife's cousin. Your wife is gone, remarried to a minor official in Gaul. She left no message for you. Your son? Grown, quiet, living in Rhodes. He sends you a scroll with one line. I remember your voice more than your face. You do not reply. Out of mercy for both of you. Rome does not know how to treat returnees. To recall someone is to admit that you send them away. So you are acknowledged, but never fully. You're spoken of in third person, never in the present tense. You are the one who endured, the one who came back, the man who was once, not the man who is. At night, you walk the city without destination. You pass temples you once prayed in, now empty. You pass senators whispering lies you once believed in. And you feel a strange emotion, pity. They do not know the world is larger than this. They do not know that outside these walls, people live without statues, without edicts, without Senate to tell them what truth is. They do not know the freedom of exile. You begin to write again. It's not rhetoric, not politics. You write about silence, about unlearning, about the sea. Your scrolls are passed quietly through circles of philosophers, poets, rebels. You become something rare, a Roman who left and learned. A voice not bitter, not vengeful, just wider. You're invited to speak in private salons. Young minds listen closely. They ask you, "What was it like?" You smile and say, "Rome is a place, but exile is a perspective." You remain in Rome, but you live on its edge. You decline official duties. You stop attending Senate games. You spend mornings in the library and evenings teaching philosophy to slaves whose masters never ask where they go. You are not powerful. You are not rich. But you are finally something Rome cannot punish. One spring you return to the sea, just for a visit. Thomas is still there, smaller, warmer than you remembered. The boy who you once thought is now a man. He shows you a shrine he built from stones you once carved. He never learned to read all the letters, but he remembered your voice, and that, in the end, is enough. You're older now. Your hands have changed. The skin is paper thin. The eyes in the mirror carry salt from two oceans, the one you crossed and the one you became. Rome moves around you like a great machine, still obsessed with monuments, still mistaking marble for immortality. And you? You walk slower now, and you see more. You see how many Romans fear being forgotten. You see how many spend their lives gathering coins, status, gossip, as if those things will guard them against loss. But you have already lost everything and returned with less, but also with more than they will ever hold. You're invited often to speak now, not in the forum, but in quiet villas, garden circles, private rooms where people actually listen. They ask you to talk about power. You tell them about humility. They ask you to talk about Rome. You tell them about silence. They ask you to talk about survival. And finally, you give them the truth. You survive exile while learning to live without an audience. And they blink. Because in Rome, performance is life. But you no longer perform. you live. You've begun to write a final letter, not to the Senate, not to the gods, to your son. You don't expect him to write back, but you want him to know his father is not bitter, not broken, just clarified. You write, I used to believe exile was the end of my story, but it was only the beginning. What I found outside Rome was a part of me that was never Roman to begin with. You seal it. Leave it unaddressed, just in case he ever comes looking. And now, you sit beneath the fig tree where your statue once stood. It bears fruit now, the sweet kind, small and bruised, but delicious. A young girl offers you one. You thank her. She doesn't know your name. She doesn't need to. You eat. The fruit is warm from the sun. Rome continues, as it always will, as it always must. But you are no longer trying to be remembered. You're simply trying to remember who you became after they took your name, after they took your titles, after they exiled you to the edge of the world. And you stepped forward anyway. You were exiled, you returned, and somewhere in between, you became free. Thank you for walking this path with us tonight. If you made it this far, you now carry a story older than empire, a story of silence, of loss, of self-shaped, not in the marble courts of Rome, but in the forgotten corners where identity becomes real. We'd love to know what resonated with you the most. Was it the silence, the return, the transformation? Leave a comment below and tell us. And if this journey gave you something, a feeling, a thought, a sense of peace, consider subscribing to Midnight Mind for more stories to touch the dark, to reveal the light. Until next time, sleep slow, dream deep, and remember, sometimes the only way back is through exile.